All right,
That's
we
good
got
news.
the legend himself, Mike Piazza. We got to believe live from the motherland. So you're just living in Italy now, huh?
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting. It's definitely like living in a faraway state somewhere. We've been here now for about 4 years. And it was a collective thing. You know, my wife and I just wanted something different for the kids, and they're attending a really nice school here and learning Italian, speaking French as well. So yeah, it's been a great experience. So far.
Yeah. And you're doing we're doing some coaching with the World Baseball Classic. Is that what's happening?
Yes. Yeah. I've been working with the Italian national program actually since the first classic, since 2006. Coached a couple classics, a couple of European championships. We won with what would be the professional league over here, mainly those players. And then we get some 2 passport guys from the States. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Major League Baseball International has been great. And now that it's hopefully post-pandemic, they're starting to get involved in Europe, and they're going to start doing more promotion in Europe. And they, of course, want to grow the game worldwide. And the European audience now is becoming a little bit more engaged with the internet and with like newer ways to follow Major League Baseball. So yeah, Jim Small with Major League Baseball International does a great job. And so we have some exciting things coming up. You know, obviously they had the games last year in London, and I think they're going to do it again this year, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen the schedule, but so that was very well received.
I'll tell you what, before they even have to worry about scheduling games, it's what you just said, is the more that MLB embraces the internet, the more the game will go global. Like, I think part of the reason why the NBA is so global is they have this entire army of free promotion on the internet. And I think the more that baseball can get behind that rather than protecting I know it's their broadcasts and their rights and whatnot, but if it was me, I'd take the free promotion and have it talked about worldwide. And that's how I think you reach every corner of the globe.
That's true. And Major League Baseball does have a unique issues aside from the other sports. Obviously they play more games, so they play 162 games, and you have to worry about local rights and visitor rights and things like that. Whereas international soccer, for example, they play twice a month at home, you know, once a week. NFL as well, they play once a week. So there's a little bit more detail involved with Major League Baseball and international rights and trying to grow the game, because it's hard, again, in a European mindset to tell them. Well, and the funniest thing is when I tell them that, I say, you know, we play 162 games, and they're like, "What? Really?" Like, I never knew.
It is crazy.
They can't relate to that, you know, because they think of soccer obviously is the popular game over here, and they play once a week, and maybe they have a cup game, you know, here in Italy they have the Coppa Italia, maybe they have a Wednesday night game and things like that. Obviously football, American football, and other sports that are becoming more popular here don't play as much. So yeah, that's the biggest thing that they really don't understand. It's hard for them to process that.
I mean, Mike, we've been watching our whole lives, and sometimes I don't understand 162. It's just like I feel like when baseball rolls around, especially we're both Mets fans, and you know how the life of a Mets fan, roller coaster, ups and downs, and a lot of hardships and whatnot. For a fan, opening day hits, and it's like, all right, put your hard hat on. We got to go for the next like 7 months. So I can't even imagine as a player where it's like, yeah, I'm going to play basically every night for, you know, seasons now. It's crazy.
Or a catcher. This man was a catcher. Out of all the things, the tools of ignorance. You're putting the tools of ignorance on, Mike, but I guess you had to do to get in the bigs, right?
Yeah, and you know, people ask me, they say, how were you so productive as a catcher? I said, you know, I went to bed. You know, I was boring. I got my rest. I mean, even though New York is a city that you can obviously have fun, and I played in LA and New York in the prime of my career, so I played in 2 pretty cool markets, market number 1, market number 2. But I mean, the key for me was just to get my rest. I mean, of course I wasn't a prude. I mean, I went out and had a good time occasionally, but I was able to pick my spots and get my rest and take care of myself. And fortunately, you know, I was blessed. I didn't sustain a lot of major injuries. I had my nicks and bumps like any catcher would, but yeah, I mean, I was just very blessed. And so, yeah. And that's the one thing kind of, I have a little bit issue with, like the expanded playoffs and so many teams making the playoffs is because the 162 game season was kind of like the test, the gauntlet. And it's like, if everyone makes the playoffs, I don't know, then you play so many games. If the number one team could get bumped out by the last wild card team, it's
crazy,
a little bit unfair.
A sport that really is very fickle, where so you could go against a 110 win team, but the wild card team has their ace going, and you get cold for a couple weeks, and you're out. I agree with you on that. I enjoy watching it, and actually, as much as I've tried to say I don't like the expansion, when October rolls around and there are extra games, I do enjoy it as a viewer. But as like a purist, and then I can't even imagine as a player where it's like this, I don't get rewarded for, winning my division by 12 games. What the hell is that about?
Well, and then, for example, my rookie season with the Dodgers, 93, I mean, we beat the Giants on the last day, and they didn't make the playoffs, and they won 103 games.
Well, that was the final season that made the wild card, because they were like,
the Braves,
can't have this happen.
They were tied with the Braves for the division, I believe, in 93. And then they had a great team. I mean, it was the last 4 games of the year, and the first 3 games they kicked our ass. And then the last game they ran out of guys, and I think they started this guy, Salomon Torres, I believe, and we jumped on him right away, and it was just the baseball law of averages. And they went home. They went home with 103 wins, if you could think of that. It's crazy.
If there's been when the Mariners that one time won like 116 games, but they got bounced in the first round. There's been the Dodgers last year getting bounced after being such a juggernaut. But if I was a fan of a 103 win team and I didn't even get one playoff game, I would be irate, man. That's crazy.
I know.
Well,
and that's the thing. It's tough.
That's what Keith always talks about. Keith always talks about that too. Like the 80s Mets, it's like, it's like, oh, we had 98 wins, but we were in the same division as the Cardinals. Sorry. And that was when you only had, the 1-1, like you guys are saying. Crazy.
Yeah, that is true. And I understand. I mean, it's the balance they're trying to strike. I mean, you don't, of course, if you're eliminated by mid-season, technically it's got to be frustrating because you're trying to get the fans still to come. And now you're having some tanking issues now that you never heard of before. And it was like, I had never heard of that. I mean, I came up, we lost, I think it was 92. The Dodgers, we almost lost 100 games. I think we had 98 losses that year. And I couldn't tell in September. I mean, Tommy was on the top step, let's get these guys, it was like, and I was like, man, this doesn't seem like that we're out of it. And then when I got traded to the Marlins and they had disassembled the World Series team in 97, that was weird because that was the opposite. It was like, man, they had traded 4 guys and their team, the core of their team was being dismantled, and they traded Al Leiter and Cookie to the Mets, I believe, in spring. And when I went there, it was like, man, put a bullet in your head. It was just depressing, it was like tough. Even though I played for Jim Leland, who I really enjoyed, I was like, man, would get me out of here. So it was the exact opposite.
Well, as Mets fans, we were lucky that, the Marlins was a cup of coffee to New York. And I feel like one of the great things, it's, for a fan base that had a lot of problems with ownership, one of the undeniably great things they ever did was acquire you and keep you. And you never really had that chance to hit the free agency market, right? Or explore that world. Is there, do you think about that? Do you go back and think like maybe you should have, or what would have been, or did you have any other franchises that you wanted to play with or guys you wanted to play with?
Well, not really. I mean, the first couple of weeks were difficult in New York, and I was hitting pretty well. I wasn't driving in a lot of big runs.
It's crazy. You were not hitting pretty well. You were hitting awesome, dude. You were breaking.
But it was what it was. It was like I wasn't really driving in a lot of runs. And I remember, when the runners in scoring position thing, I always laughed because that was what people were saying. Well, he's hitting 350, but he's hitting 280 with runners in scoring position, and
which is not that bad, by the way.
Well, honestly, looking back, and I've said this many times before, I have said this in my Hall of Fame speech, that, as a player, you could either do one of two things. You can give up or allow it to defeat you, or you can say, it's not going to defeat me, and get tougher and eat nails. And that's what I did. I mean, I was always very quiet. I mean, I retired now is nice. There's no pressure and I can relax. But when I played sometimes, I was just an a-hole, I didn't care. I was growly. I wanted to produce and I didn't like it when I didn't produce. And so everyone has to deal with things their own different way, especially with pressure. But going back to your question, I kind of knew that the Mets had to sign me. I mean, they give up like 4 guys for me. And I just don't think any other team was really going to step up and match what the Mets were going to match. And from a purely competitive and heart perspective, I felt like there was a reason why I was there. So even though I signed a big deal, I mean, yes, we have guaranteed contracts and maybe people would say, oh, it doesn't matter. Even if you failed, you still would have probably been traded or the Mets would have to pick up your salary and go to a different situation. But from a pride perspective, and this is what drove me, I wanted to succeed. So even though I signed that deal, I still felt the pressure. Even 99, 2000, 2001, I didn't really feel like I arrived and I could, pop champagne and not have to try to get better.
Right. I it's always a funny thing. Like, I feel like fans think, oh, he got his money. Now he's going to kick his feet up because there's no pressure. And I remember talking to Christian Yelich last year and he was like, because he got his mega contract and he was like, no, now I feel even more pressure because they're going to say, you're getting paid all this money. So it's actually kind of the opposite in the sense of like what you put on your own plate to succeed.
True. Bobby Valentine had a great expression. He said, to players, at least players play for different things, at least one of 2 things. Number 1 is fear of failure. And number 2 is for the house on the hill. You know what I mean? Like, for me, of course, wealth is nice. And we all think that life is great when you have money, but it really doesn't define who you are. And it really doesn't make you happy. I mean, yes, people say, I'd like to try, you know what I mean? But it's not, it's all relative. I mean, everything is scalable. And so you think just because you have money that you don't have problems. I mean, your problems are just bigger and probably problems people can't relate to. Right. But from an internal athletic, or at least from an athlete perspective, if you allow that to affect you, and with some guys it does, no question about it, you lose your edge. And I remember, I think I saw an interview with John McEnroe, and he was talking about who was the guy? I think it was Sampras. Maybe he was a really good player, a tennis player at one time, at his time, and he was at the top of his game. And John McEnroe said in the interview, he said, that's the test. When you get to a high level, the highest level, you always have to find ways to motivate yourself. You always have to find new goals, hurdles, mountains, whatever you want to say, whatever term you want to use. And that's the test of athletes who are successful, and continually remotivating yourself. And flash forward, when I retired because, I didn't want to be 70 or 60% of what I was in my prime. I just didn't want to be that guy. Mm-hmm. And I could have squeezed it out and maybe try to go make a team somewhere. And I did make a few calls. And I said, you know what, at this point, it's time to move on. I'm blessed. I have both my knees intact, and I made a great living, and it's just time to move on.
Yep.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of the craziness the first few weeks you were there. And again, by the way, Mike's numbers, I have the baseball reference pulled up. His like 3/4 of his season with the Mets, 109 games, 348 average, 417 on base, 607 slugging, a cool 1.024 OPS with 23 bombs. So yeah, pretty good 76 ribbies. So he did drive in a few guys at the catcher position, by the way.
It is. I have to apologize on behalf of a fan base. Like, you don't have to boo that. It's insane.
No, you know what it was? I remember this. I think it was a double header against the Cardinals, and I think I got a couple of hits and then grounded into a double play. It was funny. I hit behind John Olerud. When I wasn't really driving in a lot of runs, hitting behind Ole was nuts, because he would have like a 7-8 pitch walk, Mm-hmm. And there would be second and third no outs, and he would walk. And if I wasn't swinging, I'd be, come on, Johnny, just knock that guy in, take a little pressure off him. And then, of course, he would walk, and I would hit into a double play, and we'd be like, ooh, boo, you suck, And I just remember that at times. And then when I started getting cockier, or at least more confident is the word, mm-hmm. Then it was the opposite. I was like, Johnny, take this walk, because I'm going to drive these guys in. So that's the inside of the mind, I guess, of an athlete. And But yeah, I mean, I think it was that going back to the doubleheader, I didn't do well the first game. And then I think I took Darren Oliver deep. And in the second, I don't know if we swept it, but it was a big win. And then from there, I felt the tide turning. You know, it was like one of those moments where I felt like, okay, you know, if I do the right things here, I can whip this crowd up, and I could control the crowd and make them, you know. I felt it turning, whereas the first few weeks I was a little bit off balance, and understandably so. I mean, you go from LA to New York, I'm going on the beach, you know, watching volleyball and getting a burger and going to the game, and going into Manhattan, it was completely opposite. So it was definitely a culture shock, and I needed that adjustment period.
I find that so fascinating too. In '98, you went from Dodger fans who have like, you know, this kind of like stigma, which I think is unfair because I've been to LA a few times and that traffic is the absolute pits. I don't blame them for showing up late and leaving early. And then you go to, like you said, you went to Florida where it's like there was probably like 30 fans in the stands who were like, they just gutted our World Series team. And then you go to New York, and we talked to Jeff McNeil when he was still pretty fresh with the Mets, and we apologized. We're like, Jeff, we're sorry for what these fans are about to do to you, because we're sick. We're crazy. We're sick in the mind. You know how Mets fans are. We just want to see a World Series before we die. Anyone that doesn't remember '86 or wasn't alive for it is just dying for it. And you know all the craziness that has happened with this franchise over the years. So my question to you here is, did you thank Mike and the Mad Dog for bringing you to Queens? Because, you know, Mike likes to tell her when he was the one for Mike Piazza to Shea Stadium and gave him on a silver platter. Or do you say, Mike, what the hell were you doing here? I was very happy out in LA, and I'd figure out my contract after the season and free agency.
Well, that was definitely a strange year in a perfect storm. I mean, Michael Bamberg had a good article. There was a Sports Illustrated article. He was doing an article of me, and it was ironic during the trade. So and he, even today, I mean, he's written articles and books about Tiger Woods, and he's a very accomplished more of a golf writer now. Maybe back then is pretty much anything. And he even asked today, he says, you know, I get asked, what is the weirdest, sort of strangest, most incredible story? And he goes, the Mike Piazza trade. He was there, you know, and that was, I think because Fox had bought the team, Peter O'Malley sold the team, Fox came in, and it was the O'Malley family was the last of the true family owners. And then everything went super corporate. And I think at that time, Fox obviously was not, or at least that division of Fox was not used to sports. And sports is not a business. I tell people all the time, it's not. It's just not. It's not like selling movies, cars. It's not like having a store and people say, you know, sports is a business. It's not. I mean, because, you know, your fans are not going to want to hear about, you know, cutting costs or budgeting or, you know, it doesn't work that way. And so they came in, and obviously it was a standoff, and they had signed Eric Karros and Rhonda Mondesi. They needed to sign me. And then I had gotten right up to my free agency year with the contract. And we just had a contract dispute, and we had a falling out, and they traded me. I mean, they didn't even say, well, if you don't take this deal, we're going to trade you. It became so sort of toxic and so sort of dysfunctional that they trade. I had hit, actually, it was funny. I won the player of the week. I hit 3 grand slams in 1 week, and they traded me. If you could believe that.
You know what, though?
One of them was off. One of them was off Kerry Wood, you know, and Kerry Wood at that time was throwing gas, you know, and that's when I was starting to turn the crowd there.
Is there any better way to be like, all right, you know, you're trading me? Like, I walked out the door hitting 3 grand slams in a week. You know, it ain't me. It's not me, guys. That's awesome.
And they started panicking, you know, because again, I started turning the crowd because the crowd was booing me. Oh, you're greedy. You're turning down all this money. And then they've said, maybe we should give him what he wants. You know what I mean? It was getting to that point.
Well, so guess what? They should have given him what he wants. I mean, and so speaking of turning the crowd, as I was just, you know, researching, you know, when you first came here and reading some articles about how the fans were getting on you. And I'm reading this article from, I think it's Mike Vaccaro wrote it. And he said that there was one moment that like really turned the tides with the Mets fans, not the Dodgers fans. And I didn't read the whole article, but he alludes to a huge home run one night in Houston. Was there something in Houston that you remember that like?
Yeah, that was off Billy Wagner. That was actually my 300th home run when we had that crazy game, and it was 3-2, 2 outs, down by 2 with 2 guys on in the bottom of the ninth or the top of the ninth.
And was
Was it
that,
bottom of the ninth? Yeah, top of the ninth, obviously with the Astros.
do you remember
And I
that
hit a
being
home
like
run.
a
I do.
turning point?
That was probably a well-known home run, only because it was a clutch time of the game, and it was pretty well known. It was during the stretch drive. But I think actually when I had a pinch hit double off, I think it's Chuck McElroy, a left-handed pitcher. I think he pitched with us a little bit as well. I think we played the Rockies, and I didn't start that game. They started Todd Pratt, and I pinch hit, bases loaded, I think, with 2 outs against McElroy. I hit a double and drove the runs in. And then from there, I that was kind of the momentum was shifting. And then I just got hot. I mean, I finished really strong the last 2 weeks, hit some big clutch home runs. That was one of them, the one you mentioned off Wagner. And and then from there, the Mets fans were like, we got to sign this guy.
Yeah,
so
it's so funny.
It was pretty cool.
It went from like hating on you to now, like back then we got to re-sign him. And then now like feverishly arguing Hall of Fame. Like we became the biggest defenders of Mike Piazza, even though it started off. It's hard to imagine that it started off on the wrong foot, because now it's like, we are tied together forever.
No, it's been great. I mean, and I said that in my Hall of Fame speech, and I still love going back. I'll be there for opening day. We have some really cool stuff. I work with the team, our heritage, which is cool because Steve really wants to sort of celebrate the history of the team. We're retiring Keith's number. We did Jerry Kuzman's last year, which I thought was a great ceremony. Mm-hmm. So we're incrementally moving, going in that direction where we're embracing the history of the team, and I think it's very exciting. I mean, we have some cool, and the fans love it. I mean, again, it's really indicative of the fans' response. I mean, everything we hear on social media is obviously with the statue, they're like, oh, it should have been done in 20. Yes, maybe that's true. So I always say, but I say to that, the opposite as well. Sometimes when things happen too quickly, we really don't appreciate it. So now all of us have a unique perspective and appreciation for Tom Seaver and what he did for the franchise. And now he's going to be there forever. And that's going to be a cool event. So that's the start of what I think is going to be a very cool year with our heritage and the history of the team.
Yeah, and I think kind of like you said, like especially for Mets fans, we're not like the other team across town that every single year it's like 90 wins or whatever. Those special teams or those special moments. I forgot about that Houston game, but I feel like Todd Hundley had done something in that game. He might have hit a home run as well. And then when Mike hit like that home run opposite field and he did the grimace, you're like, that's gone. Like that was the Mike Piazza. Oh man, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. But those we're a little older here than some of the Mets fans. Like I'm about to turn 40. Kevin's in his late 30s as well. And that 99 and 2000 team, and even the 98 team when you joined, that was like, we're building something. And you were kind of seen as like, if not the final piece, a big piece of the puzzle was now complete. That 99 team, I feel like gets forgotten because it didn't make the World Series. To this, I will go to my deathbed. If Kenny Rogers doesn't walk home the game winning run, you guys are the first team to ever come. The man who shall not be named did not walk in the game winning run. You guys would have been the first team to come back from a 3-0 deficit. It would have been, the National League version of Yankees Red Sox. That 99 team was my favorite team of all time till this day, even the 2006 team, which I know you weren't on as well, but like that 99 team was so much fun. Like, did you like feel 99 was more special than 2000? Or, I mean, obviously you guys made the World Series with Hampton. Was there what was the difference between 99 and 2000 to you?
Yeah, I mean, what it could have shown. I mean, it's tough to go back, but no question, the best team I was on that didn't win a World Series, as far as pound for pound, guy for guy. And you think about that team as well. And again, this is no disrespect to the guys we had. I think it shows how good we really were, because we're going up against 4 Hall of Famers with Atlanta. I mean, like I said, you have Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox, and Chipper Jones, and they had some very good, I would say, complementary players as well, and good bullpen. They had some and great manager. And we're going up with Masato Yoshii against John Smoltz. You know what I mean? It's like, think about it, really. I mean, that's why I always laughed when we were going through and it was like, oh, they can't beat the Braves. Everyone was like saying they have their number, and it was like, they're the thorn in our side, and every sort of saying you can think up at that time in the media. But I'm like going, we got Masato Yoshii going up against John, like, and we're competitive, think about it. And they've got Maddox the next day against Reeder, and then Al obviously was our kind of our
I know
ace
Al
at that
Leiter was
time.
like, if it wasn't for Al Leiter, who knows? You guys would have had to score 15 runs a game to keep that.
I know. So I say, well, think about it. We're going up against 4 Hall of Famers. So yes, I mean, people always say that, and I saw Larry Chipper, recently at a card show, and we were laughing about the past and talking about old times and things. And so that was, that was cool. But yeah, getting back to the 99 team, I mean, I can't think of a team really that ground balls hit, it was an out. I mean, the defense, the things that we did, I mean, that I think were really unique as far as that with Robin and Ray, and, Ray Ordonez by far the greatest shortstop I've ever played with. I mean, wasn't a great hitter per se, but as far as a shortstop, would save you 2 or 3 runs a game, no question. So, and Fonzie clutch hitting and Ole on first. And then 2000, I don't really, I read some articles and I've seen some things that people say that, the Yankees team wasn't great, but I mean, they won a few World Series, and
they I don't know, win a lot of games that regular season, but they were still basically a dynasty team, like intact.
Yeah.
Just to say that they weren't a great team is crazy.
And, that's the one year, and I've talked about this before with other people. I mean, that's the one year I really felt like I deserved the MVP. I mean, Jeff Ken had a good year with San Francisco, and obviously Barry was with them, and they had a good team. But as far as that year, I mean, I think I had a slump early September, and then everyone was like, oh, that cost them the MVP. You know what I mean? I was like, really? Up until that time, I was hitting like 350, and just playing every day, driving in runs, and I had like a 3 for 30 start of September, and it was what it was. And came in, I think maybe I was a second that year. Yeah. But to have Todd Zeal come in, and to have, Mike Hampton obviously had a great year for us, and unfortunately left us the next year, which I think probably set us back, a few years, because he didn't have great success in Colorado, and everyone knows the history there. We don't have to drag it back up, but I think
your kids are in great schools, and so are his. I mean, two dads, right? 2 dads. and we got the school systems. We got the David Wright pick in the end, so it all worked out in a weird, crazy way.
No, but
the thing about Mike Hampton, Jeff Bagwell, I remember I saw him, and I would, became friendly a little bit when I was with the Dodgers, and we had some mutual friends, and I talked about Hampton. And we had beat them. I think I took them deep, and Ramon Martinez was pitching. This was back in 95 or 96. And I said, man, he's got good stuff. He's pretty good. And he said he could hit too. I mean, he goes, man, and he's probably the best hitter on the team. I mean, Mike Hampton was a great hitter. I mean, and that's the thing now with the full-time DH, is you're not going to see that anymore. But, and, he just dominated and pitched his ass off, and really him and Al, and guys came in and really complimented them. And the bullpen was great with Turk. So yeah, that even the 2000 team may not have been pound for pound better than 99, but it was a fun team as well. We had some good characters on that team. We had a lot of fun.
I was gonna say, it seems like, as a Mets fan, the great teams throughout Mets history always seem to have some characters, always seem to have some stories. Obviously, the team in the 80s is like, plucked from a movie script. In that 99, 2000, era. Was there any, because also nowadays, everything, if there's a scandal or something happens, everyone knows it. You can't hide anything. Social media, phones, all of that. Was there anything that went on behind the scenes in 99 that, fans would like to hear?
Well, I don't know.
Ricky Henderson was there. So, God knows, you just do Ricky Henderson hour if you want.
Ricky was awesome. I mean, hey, he got me a lot of RBIs. I mean, he was on base all the time. I mean, I say that. I mean, I love playing with Ricky. He was fun to play with. He was competitive, and but I wanted to make a point, and I thought this is interesting. It's funny. You think about the 69 team and the 73 team, right? It often gets lost in history as far as not having the same recognition as 69. And I think we're maybe that type of team to 86, even though there's more space there. I mean, obviously the 86 and the 88 team was good. They ran into Oral Hershiser, obviously, with the Dodgers. But yeah, that was the one thing for us. I mean, looking back, it would have been great to win a World Series with that team, and we came up short. and it's unfortunate. And I always say I thank God for what I have, not for what I don't have, even though it's heartbreaking. We had great teams. But fast forwarding to, I'm sorry, the point you mentioned originally about I lost my chain of thought.
Just
about
like some of the behind the scenes, off the field.
Oh,
things.
behind the scenes. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there was. I mean, it's funny. I look at social media now, and I'm not a crazy social media guy. I mean, I use it for like a bulletin board, more or less. To let people know where I'm doing, especially with the team. But no, I mean, it would be difficult to have that team, have social media with that team. Well, I mean, it would be difficult to be in the big leagues now. I mean, even if you just want to go out and have a beer, and people with the phones now, and yeah, I mean, I remember going down the road and guys, trying to bait us and in bar fights and things like that, and saying, "Hey, we got to get out of here." And so yeah, it would have been. It's a different animal today. It was a fun club. I mean, I could say we were loose. We played loose. Bobby was a character. I mean, Bobby is a very polarizing manager because he's a big personality. And I think myself personally, I've always liked those days of the big personality managers, the Joe Torres, the Tommy Lasordas, the Bobby Valentines, guys that now, I mean, Buck is probably the only sort of anomaly in today where you actually identify Buck as being the manager of the Mets, because he's a little bit of a throwback. So he's got that old school, new school sort of appeal, which I think is great. But I like big personality managers. I think that was a cool part of the game. I mean, going up with the Phillies, obviously, they had Dallas Green, Danny Ozark, and, the Dodgers had Tommy and Sparky Anderson with the Reds. I think now that's sort of a little bit of a byproduct of the new age information, the new era of information.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that does live on forever, though, on social media, we do it every year. It's probably my favorite baseball moment ever. Is the 9/11 home run, which is, obviously comes from tragic circumstances, but in my opinion, I think it's like the coolest sports moment ever, given those circumstances. And it just shows like the kind of player you were, where it was just always clutch and always big. But there's clutch, and then there's playing the first baseball game in New York City after a terror attack level of clutch. And I just have to imagine when that ball off the bat, and you realize did you realize what you have done in that moment? Did you realize like, holy shit?
When it did leave the ballpark, I did, because as a player, you have to maintain focus. And that week, to try to maintain focus was next to impossible. And I said it many times, I'll say it again. It just, to me, is nothing but divine intervention. I mean, it took every ounce of my faith and strength just to kind of internalize become emotionally unstable, because believe me, that whole week, after what we had witnessed and seen, and I got to be honest, the 20th anniversary was last year, and it was really great to see everyone and everyone reflect on it. And I'm kind of torn, because I feel the more has, which is for me a little frustrating, because I think the lesson in that will start to dissipate. But I think it's good because it also shows that we're healing. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me.
Right.
I remember the 10-year anniversary was extremely emotional for me. It was still very raw. 20 years last year, to me, just didn't, and I don't mean this bad way whatsoever. Since it's like time has a way of sort of allowing us to heal and move on in a good way. But so I think that I'll take the good part out of that. But I think the more years now that we're getting away from it, probably, and I just hope that the children, I hope people that are affected and the families that have lost loved ones will continue to educate and sort of teach that moment to kids, and that it will always be remembered. Well,
that is what you have to do, because it was so weird to think that you could be a 20-year-old adult and, not have a single, you weren't around for it. You don't have any memories, so of course it's not going to hit the same when people don't have their own experience with it. And people just don't understand the gravity of that moment.
Goosebumps every time. Goosebumps
Yep,
every single time.
time.
And when we heard that, I don't know if it was the jersey was being sold or whatever, like the fury of New York was was chaos when that went on. And that was just Mets being Mets, though. I'm sure you've seen LOL Mets. That's just a thing that happens from time to time, unfortunately. But your moment, amazing.
Thank you. And far be it from me. I mean, I will say, I feel, Fred and Jeff maybe take a little bit more abuse than they should at times. I know what well, let me just say this, just to be fair. Okay. I had some good conversations with Jeff when I was, retired, and I was and he was very open. He said, Mike, whatever you want to do, you have an open slate here. We want a great relationship with you. So, maybe some of the things that he did well or they did well obviously will not be publicized. And I think, and all things, at least in the Mets perspective for me, as much as the fans, we have this mentality that, oh man, heartbreak is part of being a Mets fan. But I think the fact that they passed on the club to Steve is something they probably don't get enough credit for. I'm sure they went through times where there was some stress in the business and whatnot, but ultimately we're blessed that Steve ended up with the club. So as much as they do take some criticism, and every owner should take criticism, that's part of being an owner. I think we have to look at the big picture and kind of say, let's turn the page and good era now. And hopefully the best is they defend the well.
Yeah. I know you got a lot to do. We just want to hit one more topic.
Just let it go. Okay.
Yeah. It's probably healthiest for everyone to just let it go. Yeah. Is probably, but I know we want to hit one more thing before we let you go.
Yeah,
we appreciate the time. Another great moment. Well, I don't know. Great. I don't know what the word is, but the Roger Clemens incident is another thing that you were involved in that is like straight out of a movie. It's like good guy, bad guy, and the heat of like the level of that moment. And it's something that just never has happened in baseball ever again, really. I mean, we all hate Roger Clemens. Is there bad blood with you guys still? Did you ever like smooth that over? Was there ever a conversation about that?
Not really. And I consider myself somewhat mature and a forgiving person. Look, I saw him, I think it was a Michael Jordan golf tournament in Vegas. I can't remember the year, 9 or 10 or something like that. And we had moved on. I mean, I don't feel like we were going to drop gloves and, kind of duke it out there. I mean, I think, and I can't speak for him. See, that's another thing. People ask me about the Roger Clemens thing all the time. I've never really heard him comment on it. I mean, I don't know if it's out there. I don't know if he avoids it. I don't know if he does interviews. He just says, look, I don't want to talk about it, period. And that's fine if that's the case. So it's tough for me. I mean, I can only tell my perspective. And I think my perspective has been told and retold, and it's probably a little boring. And yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's weird, in my career, and I've talked about this philosophically, that as much as I've had an amazing career, an amazing ride, there were some really weird moments too. And bizarre moments from the trade, from other things that we won't, that were subject of the New York media that we don't really necessarily have to revisit.
Fair enough.
But which is it. You know what? I just shrug my shoulders and I go back with the whole thing of, like I said, you got to look at the good. You got to take the sour with the sweet. No, I mean, look, if he ever reached out, I would take his call. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that wouldn't, but if he's not interested, I'm not interested. It's not a big deal. So if I see him, it's like, hey, Roger, what's up? It's not like we're going to be buddies or anything like that, but time has a way again of moving on. We're all probably husbands and fathers, and we got worried about kids and soccer practice. I got soccer practice with my kids. So that's just part of life. Life gets in the way.
And that was the thing. I still remember to this day. It was absolute, as the fans, we feel like we're in the battle, right? Because we're facing all of our Yankee fan friends that we have been going at for years. And then he says it was the ball, which is crazy that he would then take the ball and throw the ball.
Why would you throw the ball? That doesn't make
know.
sense.
But then everyone's like, oh, why didn't Piazza charge the man and fight him? It's like, well, if we lose Mike Piazza, you already talked about kind of how this team was battling.
Yankee fans, I knew my friends that were at the ballpark were, yeah, and that's something too. But, you know, again, I tell people all the time, as much as that moment was strange, and you can go back and say you should have slugged him, you should have charged him, you should have done this, you should have done that. But then I hit a home run off Jeff Nelson in the ninth inning. We almost came back and won that game.
Right.
So I think about this. Okay, if I was Machismo and I wanted to go out and make a pull, we could have fought. We probably both would have got thrown out of the game. And then if my spot would have came up in the ninth inning with 2 runs on, everyone would have been like, you know, what the F is wrong with Piazza? He cost the team the game and possibly the World Series. So when the moment happened, I was very calm, but I basically went out there and said, you know, what's your effing problem? You got a problem with me? Let's fight right here. It's fine. And he thought it was the ball. And then Charlie Relaford, who was the umpire, I looked at him and I said, what did he say? And Charlie's like, you know, let's go, let's get back. So yeah, it was bizarre. Look, I mean, you're never going to make everyone happy. I mean, I think it is what it is, but I look at that game and look at the home run and go, wow. I mean, and Jeff Nelson, let me tell you something, he was nasty. Yeah. So for me to take him deep off the foul pole and bring us back to close, but to me is, let's just say I look at that highlight of the night, and the time thing is good too. I mean, people still mention it, but you know, if the Mets play the Yankees in the World Series again, they're gonna roll it back out.
Oh yeah,
but, it's part of life.
Well, you just said you can make everybody happy, but you did a hell of a job of making a lot of us happy for a fan base that suffered a lot and didn't always have a lot to be happy about. You were that dude. You'll always be that dude to us. So thanks for all that. And we appreciate the time here too.
My pleasure. And I'll see everyone opening day, and hoping for a great season. 60th anniversary. So we got a lot to be proud of this year, and hopefully it will end with a championship.
God willing. From your lips to God's ears.
All right.
Thanks again, Mike.
Take care, guys.